Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? It's a little bit of a lengthy introduction, but we're really excited to talk to you about some of the near-term possibilities with GenAI and some of the trends that we have going on. So real quickly, I'll just do a brief introduction, then Kunal, I'll hand it over to you for an intro as well. My name, again, Jim Rowan. I head up AI at Deloitte. What does the head of AI do at Deloitte? Well, I sort of have three responsibilities. The first is around go-to-market, working with our clients, our alliance partners, talking about how we really shape the future of AI with them. The second part is around how we transform Deloitte. In the US, we're about a 180,000 person organization, pretty substantial, a lot of knowledge workers, so how we use AI in all of our day-to-day activities to help improve the client experience. And the third part, which I think is sort of the most exciting part about AI, is innovation. Like how we use innovation to really change our organization and our business and what we're doing. So great pleasure to meet you guys. Kunal, brief intro for you as well, please.
Yeah, Jim, thank you. Excited to be here, guys. I'm the head of data analytics and AI at Wells Fargo. For the consumer business, the agenda, as the name suggests, right, is building data products, driving analytics and data science for the organization, and now all of AI and generative AI, right? So super excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for being here as well. Jim, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So when we talk about trends, maybe just two things I wanted to jump in on. Since this morning, Deloitte just released our Tech Trends report. This is 16 years in the making. We run this report every year. Pretty exciting to see it out there. No surprise, AI is one of the big trends that we're seeing in our Tech Trends report. Really focused on the fact that AI is ubiquitous. It's everywhere in all the things that we're doing. It's getting incorporated into software packages. It's part of our consumer life. We engage with the AI tools on a regular basis, as I'm sure you do as well. So take a look at our Tech Trends report. Really encourage you guys to see what we've got out there and sort of how we're shaping the market. The other big trend sort of material that we have from the Deloitte perspective is our State of Generative AI report. Now, we've been running this report annually for a couple of years. What we decided to do was actually run this report quarterly because the pace of change in this market is just moving so fast. So you survey a group, and a year from now, you don't really get to see the trends. So our Q3 report is out there, and a couple of key things I just wanted to share with you guys about the report. Number one, and probably no surprise to folks in this room, enterprises are continuing to struggle with the idea of getting production solutions for AI out there into the market. So we saw that about 2/3 of organizations only were able to get about, I would say, 30% of their AI experiments into production. So that's really created a challenge and a tension, and that tension is really around ROI. Why am I investing so much money in this technology if I can't see the unlock and the value creation? So we're starting to see some frontier organizations that are really embracing AI start to unlock that capability. We also dive into the report talking about some of the challenges organizations are facing. Besides just measuring the value of the solution, we understand a little bit more about data foundations. So we have the right things in place from a data perspective. What are our policies and approaches around risk, and how do we want to handle that within the organization? And most importantly, what we saw in the survey was our people. So organizations responded back and said that only 20% thought that their people were ready to join the AI journey. So as you think about the trends we're seeing over the next couple of years, I think there's going to be a big investment in these data foundations, people, making sure that we really get the organization ready for embracing AI. So that's all about the trends. Maybe Kunal, just get your feedback on this a little bit too. What do you think sort of on tap? What's your vision for AI and where it's headed in the next couple of years?
Correct. And that was a good introduction, Jim, by the way. I totally agree, right? AI becoming ubiquitous is absolutely what we see over the next 2-3 years, both in the sense of consumers, all of us being able to use it on our personal lives, but also applications embedding AI into it. I think if I think about AI trends for the next couple of years, you've got most organizations will focus on very efficiency focused, will continue to do that, right? Generative AI applications with clear ROI. And I think that's important because that ROI is going to fund the build out of the platforms, the capabilities, that then creates that long tail of productivity initiatives that don't necessarily need a high ROI and drives the ubiquity of AI.
Yeah.
I think in parallel, as the models start evolving and becoming better, we'll start seeing a world where we'll have use cases that are more things that we don't do today. Over the next, I'd say, 12 to 18 months, it's going to be all about things we do today, but just doing it faster, cheaper, better. After that, we start seeing things that look a lot more like new things we didn't do before. And that's both from model development and organizational maturity.
That's great. And I think we heard some speakers already today talk about AI agents.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to like not look at any AI research and not hear agents. So what are some of your thoughts about what's going on in this agentic AI space?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. As I was saying, look, it's going to get embedded in applications.
Yeah.
The number one thing that I'm most hopeful for, right,
Yeah.
in agentic AI, and look, predictions are dangerous.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah.
always precisely wrong. So someone's going to quote me in 2 years. But I think we'll see proliferation of autonomous AI services.
Yep.
Coupled with like hyper-personalization that we've been talking about for like a couple of decades now, but can truly be possible across applications. So think of things like planning your travel, but not planning it with just like a quick query into an app, but it goes out and buys the tickets for you, does the budgeting, gets you into financial planning, connects the whole ecosystem together and does it for you.
Yeah.
I think we'll start seeing some services come up like that.
I really like where you're going with that too. And I feel like in this agent space, I mean, a lot of you probably have been on the journey with robotic process automation. We've done sort of these linear automations over a period of time.
Yeah.
And the real value of the agentic systems is that they're autonomous and they're actually going out there and doing these things. You're giving them a task and they're doing these actions,
Yeah.
which are sort of responding back to a series of screen scrapes and defined sets of processes. So I really do hope, and I agree with you, that this is going to be a big trend that we should see and really start to get more enterprise value from these trends as well as they get going.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, maybe another question for you too, as we think about this, like we're both consumers of AI. We use AI regularly. Maybe just starting off, like, do you have a favorite AI tool that you like to use and like helps make your life a little bit easier?
Ooh, gosh. I use, yes, so Perplexity.
Perplexity, okay. One of my faves as well.
Yes. I think Perplexity is going to change the game on search for sure.
Yep.
We're seeing that in the consumer space for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great one. So now, I mean, search is a big one, but what are some other kind of macro trends you're seeing around like broader consumer, engagement around AI?
Yeah, we talked about like ubiquity of it, right?
Yeah.
Customers using it more and more. I think we'll see that cycle of from early adopters to everybody using more AI, right? But I think the biggest shift we'll probably see is from the mundane tasks of like, I was using AI just recently to read my HOA document, right? But we'll go from that to more complex tasks.
Yep.
We talked about like autonomous AI services, but I think customers will start relying a lot more on these services. I think for organizations, what that means is it translates into the expectations are going to rise for customers on how much you know them, how they interact with your applications, and it's got to be more interactive as opposed to one way. And that's gonna start to show up.
I think so. And one of the things that we see a lot too is that if you have this experience in the consumer world and it works really well for you, you're going to expect it in the enterprise. So a lot of our employees, our consultants that are out there, are expecting these tools in their day-to-day activities as they work in our environment. But then we have this tension that we have to manage between, well, but you're working on our client data, so we have to secure it and protect it and make sure it doesn't leave the four walls. It's not like you're sharing a picture of your cat, which is a little bit different level of privacy and control. So, I mean, that kind of brings us to a really interesting topic around privacy and data controls. What are some of your thoughts around where that space might go around data privacy or customer privacy?
I think I think the customer's expectation as they start using it more, their expectation on transparency, on the use of their data, the privacy, is just the bar's going to go up. I find, and so will regulation on that front. That will mature in its space itself. I think AI tools, though, and I saw some exhibits out there, actually are well positioned to serve and make it better too, and solve some of these problems. Like think about anomaly detection, data lineage. For those who are data experts in the room here, right? Those have been key challenges for us, and it takes a long time. But I think with nice AI tools, that can get a really good unlock as well. Same thing with data labeling. Like you think about compliance, automated data labeling for confidential data, it'll help, and it'll help customers on the other end. So absolutely, I think from an enterprise perspective, that is going to be key.
Yeah, I think so. And really, it's interesting too. because it's all modalities of data. Like we've thought a lot about like tabular data and unstructured data, but now we're talking about all modalities. So we're talking about voice data, we're talking about image data out there. Our tech trends report talks about some of the spatial computing information. And so the wealth of data that's untapped is actually kind of phenomenal when you think about how much there is out there. And then as consumers, like what do we want to do from a privacy perspective? And then in the regulatory environment, what will actually change? Will we follow some of the state rules? Will we follow what's going on in the EU AI Act? I think a lot of these things are what organizations, as they think about scaling, are trying to evolve and understand as they get to like, hey, how do we want to get this working inside my enterprise? So really important kind of area too, and I think I'm glad we're hitting it. I mean, and then I guess the other thing, we've talked about scaling, and sort of that's kind of a trend over the next year or two. Talk to me a little bit about like, as we think about transformation around AI, right? We feel like organizations need to transform through the use of AI. What's like your personal perspective around transformation with this type of technology?
I think it's interesting, right? This is a really exciting point in time. It feels like what .com seemed like a few years ago, right? A lot is going to change. I think business models are going to change. But as you're talking about, right, you take what the customers are expecting and what enterprises need to do to address it. In a large-scale transformation like this, there's a parallel track that's going on. I think one big challenge is you've got models that are, we were just talking about it backstage, every 2 weeks there's a new model out, and there's a new version of it for every 3 months, even the ones that you're using. So it's very easy to get distracted by the moving state of the art.
Yeah.
And that is going to be a challenge, right? Should you build for now? Do you build for the future? The other, I think, challenge is going to be around cost and the cost of computing, right? Storage and computing. That will start to show itself. The early ROI use cases, when we have the appetite to do experiments, invest in the space, it's easier. But over time, that's going to become a big question. And being able to, as practitioners, I think for us, I know we're trying to stay in a place where we are hyper-focused, be rigorous about calculating those costs, have tools in place that can actually tell you what your costs are and be able to project those out, and also go from not the most expensive models, but figure out how you use for your specialized use cases, the more open source models or fine-tuned models for specialized use cases. So that's going to be important as we go through transformation for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things, we get this question a lot of, well, we've tried these experiments, we want to get production, we want to get our solutions to scale. What are the tips, what are the tricks, how do you make it happen? And I think one of the things we've done that's been really helpful is we put out a report that talks about, we call the 13 elements of scaling generative AI solutions. Now, 13's a lot. It's a lot of things to go do. But I would say we can kind of summarize it into maybe 4 categories of things, which is like, hey, have the right strategy. Like, you're going to be on a journey for a long period of time on this. This isn't just an overnight thing that happens. So what's your strategy? Where do you want to start within the organization first? And what are some ways you're going to start looking to be agile about that strategy and implement as you learn? Because as you were talking about, this technology is moving at such a rapid pace. Yeah. We're like living an agile development life cycle, every day with all these new code drops of new features and functionality. And so having that strategy helps keep an organization, I think, really closely connected to staying on point of what they're trying to do. The other piece is like having the right processes in place too. Like, what's the organization's ability to collect all the inbound use cases, then we'll figure out a way to funnel those to the most highest priority set of tasks, capabilities they want to go after. The next piece that we see in that list of 4 is data and technology. So we've talked a little bit about this, but if you don't have your data estate in order, it is very hard to go do your AI activity. One of the things we talk a lot about is, with data is garbage in, garbage squared when it comes to AI, because you're just making the output a little bit less accurate, with the lower quality data. And the final piece is people, which I talked about in our survey, is really, really important, because if you can create all these amazing tools and capabilities, but you've got to create this sort of environment within the organization where your employees can learn how to use the technology, can engage with it in an effective way, but also we need society to start understanding, too, how we use these tools. So those are the 13 things bubbled down to 4. And you can check it out in the booth if you want to see more about what we're talking about scaling. But I think it's a really important area of the piece. And I also love what you talked about the TCO side of this too.
Yeah.
Right? Because the cost behind some of these things can be prohibitive as we get going.
Yes. And I think we should start, everybody's going to start thinking about where they build versus buy.
Yeah.
That's going to be a key piece, right? Do you want to scale? Do you have scale enough to go build everything? Do you pick and choose where you buy? I think it's going to become important to have that framework. It's like with any other technology, but in this case, it's going to become a lot more important.
Yeah.
Do you go for specialized use cases? Do you start buying? And for the scaled use cases, you can start building. That dynamic, and depending on the number of AI use cases you have, right, that is going to make a big difference to the size of your organization. So I think those are going to be a key considerations for everybody that's going to be in the space for the next few years.
For sure. So a lot of really important trends that are coming out. We've hit on a lot of them. Maybe kind of a question we can both sort of opine on a little bit is like, what's your piece of advice, to think about? What would you tell the group of like, hey, next couple of years, here's some advice on what you think you should be thinking about?
I think, we may have scared everybody with the amount of costs and things you have to think about, like the new models that are coming. The key piece is going to be, while there is a lot, pick the 1 or 2 things that you want to get done and go do those. Don't wait. Start working on it. Start working on the ones that you know you're going to have passion behind, you'll have dollars behind. Go do the 1 or 2 things. Don't look for the future. The other piece, I would say, is always have people in the line of business who are delivering on these products understand generative AI. So either take people who understand AI and have them do the delivery, or people who are already working on the delivery learn about generative AI, because that's going to be key. Having practitioners separate from people who own the end product, that is generally the key gap. Because you can create really cool things here, and you may not understand what you're delivering on the other end. So you want to have those 2 places together. I think those are 2 things I would leave with everybody with.
I think that's great advice. And we'll have a chance to take some questions from the audience, too. So as you're thinking about your questions, I think like the thing for me, because the pace of change is so fast, it's like, how do you get in a routine to just stay current with the information? Like we were just talking, hey, did a new model drop last night? I'm not sure. I got to go look. It's like, what's your routine to keep pace with what's going on? But then that's your North Star, back to the strategy within the organization, about how you're going to continue to sort of keep focusing on that space without getting distracted by all the changes that are happening around you, because there's so much. And you have to understand those changes, but at the same point in time, you can't lose direction on your North Star and where you're trying to go with your strategy.
That's actually a great point, right? Even if there was, for a second, if we assume there's no more generative AI innovation that happens coming out of all the big scales. There is so much value to be derived with the technology that already exists. That you can almost be blind to what's coming in new. And still grab a lot of value associated with it.
Yeah, for sure. And then just stay curious, right? Try the tools. Like I feel like that's so important, is just like actually using them, understanding what the capabilities are, and more importantly, understanding the limitations too. When you try it, you understand, oh, okay, it's good at this, it's not at that. Here's how I can help educate my organization about the use of AI. So great, thank you. These are great pieces of advice. Maybe we can take some questions from the audience. I think we have mic runners as well. Any questions? Oh, actually, the mics are right up there. Oh, great, all right. Someone not leaving, but a question.
I just wanted to, I'm Matan from Zim. I wanted to ask, now currently all the LLM, the ChatGPT, GenAI, it's based on not just the web data, also, but same output of the GenAI. I mean, now all the training will be based on like recursive data training. What you can say about that? It will be destructive, I think, in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. Would you like to take a first stab at it, or would you like me to?
You can go for it.
Okay, I get the hard job of going first here on this one. I think some of you might have seen it. The questions are a little bit about, I think, the use of synthetic data as you train large language models, and is that creating a challenge for the output that we see in the language models? I think there's a few papers on that, and there's some academic research that's coming around that space. But I think what we're seeing is there was this race to fill the models with all the possible data that we could fill the models with. And now what we're finding, I think, is that smaller models, more fine-tuned to the things that we want to actually run those models against, might generate more successful results. So we kind of envision sort of a couple different categories: frontier models that are general purpose, good at everything, and then smaller language models that are more task specific, that have either been distilled, fine-tuned, take your topic and deployed more specifically within the enterprise for the tasks that they're really good at. And so that seems to be the split in the in sort of how people are using the models at the moment, or what we're seeing. I think there's a lot of great research about the training of the models, the effectiveness of that training, as well as different types of models that can be used, and sort of how you think about, do you go with the transformer architecture? There's another organization we're working with that's looking at a different approach to the transformer architecture. So there's a lot of really cool innovations in the space. Kunal, anything else you'd want to add?
I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
It is the evolution, and now we're getting past the 3-year point, to be honest, but I think the evolution is going to be where you will start finding models which are very specific to specific use types, right? Not just use cases, but use types. And there you'd be able to sort of know where the data is coming from. Like an example of this is you do need synthetic data sometimes, right? So AlphaGo, for example, right, was built off of no data. It created its own synthetic data to go train itself. So there will be places where they'll be used for synthetic data, really. But yes, there is an asymptote coming for the large language models, but it's far away from everything we can see, right? Which you're not looking at the next 2-3 year horizon. There's enough good data to go after, but you're absolutely right, there is a risk. And on explainability, once you get into the recursive use of the same data the generative AI is producing, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's also a lot to learn, too, on the pro. We've got a lot of people over here. I'll be quiet. Next question.
Yes, I think it was mentioned earlier that in a survey, about 20% of respondents are ready to embrace AI. Is there any information you're able to share on the remaining 80%, what the primary reasons for holding back on embracing AI is? And how are your organizations looking to tackle that?
Yeah. So great. So I'll just clarify the stat too. You're pretty close on. So we surveyed about 2,800 global executives around their use of AI and their organizational readiness, and only 20% said their organization was ready. So the other 80% is like, we're not ready for AI. And so what we're seeing, like one of the reasons are, is that people don't understand the technology. So there's a training gap and an understanding about like, what does it actually do? What can I use it for? There's an executive education challenge too, because there's I hear about it, but I'm not quite sure how it impacts my general organization. So a lot of it's the learning side of things. The next piece is a little bit of like fear of change. So it is a disruptive technology, and there was a lot of stories, I would say, early on, like post-chat GPT moment, there was like, oh my gosh, AI is coming for all of our jobs. And I think we've changed that narrative to recognize that humans plus AI are a far more successful kind of collaboration than AI taking over everyone's jobs. And so trying to change those narratives have been some of the things that we see organizations doing, and really pushing on the education and adoption story. Anything else you'd add?
No, totally. I think the whole concept of AI augmented workforce is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great. Yeah.
You have more questions?
Hi there. Good morning.
Morning.
My name's Rupert Wade. I'm a founder of a company named Applaud. Our focus is creating AI digital avatars to democratize knowledge work. When we think about the advancements of a majority of these AI models, they're becoming more and more advanced week by week, month to month, multimodal. I keep coming back to the same question. What would it mean to be a knowledge worker in the future?
Yeah.
I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are. Are you leaning towards more of a collaboration effort, or do you think that, it's going to be similar to like the role of a lighthouse keeper back in the early 1900s where, some roles would just evaporate altogether? So I'm curious what your thoughts are going into the future.
Yeah. Do you want to take a stab, or would you like me to? Do you want to do a first stab?
So knowledge worker, tell me more, what's knowledge worker again?
So an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, roles that have traditionally been safe, but now have the ability to be simulated using large language models.
I think it's back to that previous question of an AI augmented workforce, right?
Yeah.
If you become reliant on the old ways of doing it, I think you absolutely will become obsolete. But if you're an engineer, for instance, you take away the calculation and you go, it's like, I can do things that I wanted to do and would have taken me 6 months to do. I can do it in a week. And then I move on to doing the next thing. So just your pace becomes much faster at doing what you're doing. So I think we'll start seeing, this is my personal belief, again, a little bit of dangerous territory, but I think what we'll start to see is we will see quality engineers, for instance, do a lot better. We'll see the accounting firms too, right, start doing that a lot better, a lot faster, and you'll see democratization of work as well, right? So accounting firms, for instance, right, if it was relegated to high wealth clients outside of the corporate space, you'd start seeing all of us being able to use it at a much faster clip. So I think it'll sort of broaden its scope too.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I want to be sensitive to the fact that there's another guest that's going to come on and speak here. So a second. So we're at booth 209. I'm here today and tomorrow. Would love to engage with some of you, especially around the happy hour. I'll be back for it too. Happy to answer other questions. I'm digitizing myself into an avatar so we can talk. I'll probably need some therapy after that. And thank you guys very much. If you're interested to learn more about our State of Generative AI survey, check out the QR code above. Thank you all and have a great rest of your morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.